Let's stay in London, in fact, go to Nomi Bar Yakuv, prominent British international lawyer, negotiator, mediator specializing in conflict resolution, particularly in the Middle East, Associate Fellow of Global Fellowship Initiative, Geneva Centre for Security Policy. It's great to have you on the programme this evening, Noma. First of all, can I get your immediate thoughts and reaction on what we've just seen? These three countries recognising formally Palestine.
I think it is a very momentous moment. It's a very important first step, hopefully towards peace, but we have quite a long way to go. I think it's, as both Benedict and Noga Tarnopolsky said earlier, it is all fed up with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He was given the chance, especially by Sir Keir Starmer, the UK Premier, to reach a ceasefire first. But he didn't. He continued to wage war with catastrophic consequences for Palestinians in Gaza and for Gaza itself. There's barely a building standing. And he had plenty of warning. So I think this is a courageous move. And the important issue would be to ensure that it is coupled with security guarantees, because otherwise, for Israel and for the new Palestinian state, because otherwise it will collapse before it even starts. And we're really heading towards a very long road towards peace. And I think we have some very good peace plans on the table that the three prime ministers spoke about. They didn't mention them in names, but you have the Arab peace initiative. It's the Arab reconstruction plan for Gaza. You have European initiatives and the Tony Blair initiative that US President Donald Trump is said to have agreed to. And they all talk about a transitional authority in Gaza without displacing any Palestinians at all, with the support principally of the Arab states and Europe and the US. And I mean, there's fine tuning to do there, but this particular statement is aimed at, it's a reaction to Smotrich, to the Israeli finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, saying that Israel's going to construct in the E1, which would completely destroy the prospects of a Palestinian state. And the prime minister himself, as has been said, he himself, Netanyahu, has said there will not be a Palestinian state, not over my dead body. So I think the time had come to put the foot down, and it's a first step which will galvanize and energize those interested in ensuring that peace, dignity, and equality will prevail.
This is this area that's long been muted, hasn't been carried out to full effect, which would effectively siphon off part of East Jerusalem from the occupied West Bank, to which, as you say, both Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir talking about this going ahead with speed, given this announcement. But then on the other side of this, let me put to you the fact that you have opponents of the government that will say that this is a reward for Hamas, this is gesture politics, there are hostages still being held, and at the same time, the power potentially that European countries had, and Canada and Australia, to leverage some power at a later stage over Hamas, it loses that.
I don't see any loss of leverage, I'm afraid, Gavin. I beg to differ with you on this particular point. I think it's very sad that there are still 48 innocent hostages languishing in dreadful conditions in Gaza. And I think it's a failure of world leadership too, because there has been very little done to get those hostages out. But and again, I think the pressure should mount now. These declarations are unconditional. They're declarations of intent. But all three prime ministers would like to see the hostages released, would like to see serious reforms on governance and elections done in the Palestinian Authority, and there is a consensus that Hamas will have no place whatsoever in the future Palestinian state. But those are declarations of three states that don't rule Palestine. And what if they are voted in? I mean, and there is a problem there. And I agree with you fully that there is a problem that you have 48 hostages that are still in Gaza. And yes, they should be released. And it will be very interesting to see what happens in New York in meetings with US President Donald Trump, because he's the one that holds the leverage over Netanyahu and over the ceasefire deal. But these particular declarations, despite the statements, they don't actually address the issue, because all they say is they're calling for their release, but there is no actual move to get them released.
We're hearing similar echoed thoughts from the opposition in Canada, but let me put the Conservative position to you in the UK, which is this. It was under David Cameron 11 years ago that Parliament voted and agreed to recognise the state of Palestine. The fact that it's now taken 11 years in this moment, Kemi Badenoch saying, yes, right thing to do, absolutely the wrong moment. You don't see that?
No, I do see I see the problem. I understand it, but I also see that with every minute that the war goes on in Gaza, there is less of Gaza and there are less living people. So there are children dying every hour in Gaza, on average, one child an hour. We don't know how many Palestinians are buried under the rubble. You have Hamas are using the local population as human shields, and the only way to end the war is for US President Donald Trump to pick up the phone to the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Abdulrahman Al Thani, and agree the terms and then impose them on both sides, because otherwise the war will go on and on and on, and then this declaration will mean less and less. So you need to have a number of mechanisms in place, and yes, that needs to happen. And I am very sad to see the war continuing, more Palestinians dying, and the hostages not released. Not only that they're not released, that there's no knowledge as to where they're held and in what kind of conditions at the moment. We have seen dreadful images recently released by both Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Yes, I do see the point, and I think these statements have to be coupled with action. And as I said, the action needs to be at the very top, and they need to rally US President Donald Trump and the Emir of Qatar in order for this to happen.
Yeah, those images you're referring to yesterday, the Ezanim al-Qassam brigade of Hamas putting out what they called farewell messages of 48 of the hostages, saying that the relentless offensive in Gaza City will ultimately lead to their death. So, as you say, cruel propaganda images. At the same time, I do wonder, there's a big question mark over the fact that we know President Trump, capricious, has itchy trigger fingers often, will send out on Truth Social lots of messages, but in this case he hasn't yet commented on this. Yes, he's on a way to a memorial for Charlie Kirk. Do you see what's happened in the last few days where you are, the state visit to the UK? If we look at the mediation, the diplomacy going on, do you think that is playing a part in helping the situation in Gaza?
Yes, I do. I assume that the best diplomat and the most serious diplomacy is the back channel diplomacy, the quiet diplomacy. He had an audience, a tete-a-tete with His Majesty King Charles. And I think King Charles is an extremely seasoned diplomat, and there's no doubt whatsoever that they discussed this issue. And you saw the outcome in the press conference the following day with Sir Keir Starmer, where they amicably said that they disagree on this issue, whereas normally Trump would lash out on anyone who disagrees with him. So it's yet to be seen who is going to persuade Donald Trump to do the right thing next week in Washington. And I'm not holding my breath. And Netanyahu clearly thinks that he will potentially have his way. But that said, he's not answering the strong push from his right-wing coalition to annex the West Bank imminently. They wasted no time. Just as the statements came out, each statement, they were tweeting immediately, annexation now of the whole West Bank, not of parts of the West Bank. And Netanyahu basically said, oh, well, we can't do anything until I go to Washington. So all eyes on Washington and the meeting between Netanyahu and Trump. And I don't think this will be resolved before.
Nomi, great to talk to you this evening. Nomi Bar-Yaakov, prominent British international lawyer, negotiator and mediator, specialising in conflict resolution. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, guys.